welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, it's so great to have you. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoy the show. Well, you know what? I have a colleague that always suggests these wonderful topics for me to cover, and he always has these wonderful clients for me to highlight, and today is no different. And you know what? I didn't know anything about what we're going to talk about today. You may not have heard about them either, but I think that you'll love getting to know them. So let me please introduce my guest to you today. We're going to talk about the Stowe Center for Literary Activism, which is based in Hartford, Connecticut. I have the pleasure of having Michael Mallory, and I'm going to take a moment because there's a lot to read, so just excuse me while I look down. He's the chair of the Stowe Center of Literary Activism Board of Trustees. He's the director of social and emotional learning for Windsor Schools. And my second guest is Kimora Harrington. She's the member of the Stowe Prize Activism Selection Committee. Also Kimora's Cultural Corner, which offers training in cultural humility. And I would like to welcome Michael and Kimora to the show today. Thank you both so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having us, Deborah.
Thank you for having us, absolutely.
So Michael, what I'd like to do is start with you first. If you and then Kimora would take time to introduce yourself to the viewer. Tell us about yourself. Take us back into your background.
All right, well, Deborah, thank you so much for having us today, and to the audience out there. Thank you for tuning in. So Dr. Michael Mallory, I'd like to say that I'm an educator, I'm a scholar activist, but more so I'm an activist and an advocate of hope and change. And so a little bit about my background. As you mentioned, Deborah, I am currently serving as the chair of the Board of Trustees, but I've been in the field of education, a systems leader for over 15 years. And so everything as it pertains to literacy, as it pertains to really engaging with, engaging with the world around me, that, as it pertains to, thought-provoking speech, thought-provoking text, inspiring change within the school systems, inspiring it within communities. That's everything that I've been able to dedicate my life to over the past, 15 years being in this field. Originally from the great state of Louisiana, but I've been navigating in New England for over a decade now. And that has just really found me centering my work around what does it mean to reinterpret history. Right, whether that be educationally, historically, as it pertains into all of the different facets of life. How do we engage with it in a way that, engages us critically, thoughtfully, where we can hear other perspectives and really grapple with, other human realities, so then we can come together and be stronger. And so that's kind of a little bit of my background. I've been in Windsor Schools for almost 5 years now, leading social emotional learning and family partnerships. And that's also, once again, bringing community together, enhancing skill development around what does it mean to articulate your strengths, your needs, and your challenges, so we can be healthy and the students and families can be healthy and whole. And so just a little bit about my background, and excited to be here.
Michael, tell me about the Stowe Center for Literary Activism. What does it mean, and how did you get involved with them?
Yeah, so the Stowe Center for Literary Activism, and I want to shout out our incredible team there, led by our amazing executive director, Karen Fisk. And so the Stowe Center for Literary Activism really it interprets and reinterprets and preserves the legacy of Harriet Beecher Stowe. And what it has been able to do, and to those who don't know, that Harriet Beecher Stowe and the legacy of Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is still one of the most thought-provoking novels that, interpreted and really articulated what was happening in the sins of the world around slavery. And so the Stowe Center for Literary Activism, through Harriet Beecher's legacy, we're able to bring in so many different historical points and historical figures, and have salons and have discussions, with our new enterprise, the Stowe on the Go, right? The center is able to take, trainings and take kind of a microcosm of what happens within the center and bring that into, community, bring that into schools to really continue to be a change agent and to be an organization of hope. And to really continue the legacy that Harriet Beecher created, but then also bring in new and modernized actors and agents who have engaged in the world and have been, revolutionaries in their own regard. And so the Stowe Center for Literary Activism, which formerly was the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center, but we wanted to modernize it in a way, and just great work with the rest of my fellow board members. And what does this center mean for the 21st century and moving forward? And that's, how do people and artists and community engage with literary texts, right? And what does that activism look like for them moving forward to inspire change across the world?
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Michael. Kimora, let me talk to you for a second, please. Why don't you take some time and introduce yourself to the viewer? We'd love to get to know you.
Well, it's great to get to know all of y'all. My name is Kimora Leila Harrington, and I'm a cultural humility educator. And cultural humility is really this wonderful way of packaging and helping us figure out how to get over ourselves, so that we can connect with each other and do the work that we need to do, right? But I've been working in the field of education for 30 plus years now, and I just had to look at my resume, and it's like you go from 20 plus and then so we've been doing this for a while, which means I've seen lots of wonderful new innovative ideas become really old and outdated models, and all of these different interesting things happen. So I appreciate being able to work in a world where, the world that I've created, where history dictates our understanding of the future. And so therefore, thinking about my work with the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center for Literary Activism, which is, again, Michael, there could not have been a better name change. When it comes time to, when people are looking at rebranding and such, creating that as the real gives us a real foundation of what work comes out of the Stowe Center now. And I have to say, very, very excited. I've been working with the Stowe Center for a few years inside the realm of cultural humility with their staff, employees and such. And then 2 years ago, I was asked to interview the person who won the Stowe Prize 2 years ago. And that was Dr. Ruha Benjamin, and her book was Viral Justice, and it was amazing. And it was nonfiction because it was necessary, right? And then last year, it was Dr. Bettina Love with her book, Punished for Dreaming, which is amazing. And again, a nonfiction novel. And I hope that at some point during this conversation, we can talk about, just the reasons why and the necessity of us choosing not just this book, but a book that is fiction in 2025 as our nation is navigating all of the strange stuff that we're navigating. I think it's a very significant and very important that the Stowe Center, which I believe is leaps and bounds ahead of so many other organizations doing the same type of work, that choosing a book that is fiction and a retelling of an American story is incredibly important. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, Deborah.
Good. Kimora, also we're talking to you about Kimora's Cultural Corner, which offers training in cultural humility. What does that mean, and what do you do?
If I'm assuming that folks who are watching this have probably been around long enough to hear that term cultural competence, right? And cultural competency was this thing that people did for a long time, thinking that if we could learn about other people, then we would be prepared to work with them, and the faux pas of culture, race, age, social, all of those things wouldn't happen, right? But it really was a very egocentric way of looking at things. And there's this idea that we were so incredibly important and so incredibly smart that we just needed to learn about other people. And when we learned about them, therefore we'd be qualified to work with them, in no way taking into account that other person's lived experience and the thing that we don't really like to talk about, how that person perceives us. Not who we really are, but based on what they see when they meet us. So to take it way back, cultural competency came, cultural humility came when some emergency room nurses who had been forced to take these cultural competency classes realized that at 2 a.m. when they're talking to a grandmother, all of these things, you can know everything on paper about what a Puerto Rican family dynamic looks like, but in that emergency room, that's not what's going to create a place where you and that grandmother have a relationship, and you know that you need to share information in a way that cares for the child. And from that point, they realized cultural humility. They realized we're nurses, and therefore it doesn't matter what we think we are as nurses, it matters what people think of that profession. And out of that grew this whole wonderful way of really looking at ourselves, valuing ourselves, but looking at ourselves and thinking about how that shows up when we work with other human beings.
Okay, Kimora and Michael, let's take a moment and take a break. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You're tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Keep 2025 fraud-free with these 3 tips from Better Business Bureau. Be wary of unsolicited emails from a person or company. Remember, scammers can make emails look like they are from a legitimate business, government agency, or reputable organization. Never click on links or open attachments in unsolicited emails. If you haven't met a person face-to-face, don't send them money. This is especially true if the person asks you to transfer funds using a prepaid debit card or Cash App. Money sent to strangers in this way is untraceable, and once it's sent, there's no getting it back. And resolve to research the retailer before entering payment information when shopping online. Ask, is this a person or business I know and trust? Do they have a working customer service number? Where is the company physically located? And have I checked to see if others have complained? Visit bbb.org to read complaints and reviews and find a trusted company near you.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, thanks so much for being here. I hope you're enjoying the show. Well, my conversation continues on with Michael and Kimora. And Michael, I spent a lot of time this morning on the website, harrietbeecherstowecenter.org. What will the viewer find when they visit it? Do you know?
Yes, Deborah. And so when you go to harrietbeecherstowecenter.org, you will find, right, just a wealth of information that talks about a non-traditional museum. And so you will find, a little bit about Harriet Beecher Stowe's, her legacy, about her early childhood, who she is and what she represented to the world. Obviously, you'll learn about the historical impact, the global impact of, Uncle Tom's Cabin. But then you'll see some of the other, interesting aspects of the center, what makes the center hold, right? Our Stowe on the Go initiative that brings meaningful dialogue into communities, into schools. So you'll learn about initiatives. You'll learn about our 2025 Stowe Prize winner, Mr. Percival Everett, which hopefully we'll have a little moment to talk about, and just his works and the significance of the Stowe Prize for Literary Activism. And you will find many articles and archives about the center. And ultimately, it tells the story of Nook Forum, right? The place in where the center currently, resides, and just the history of what makes it whole, and all of the different events that have been a gathering place and a melting pot for communities to tell the story through Harriet Beecher Stowe's lens. And so it's a wealth of information. It'll let you know the amazing, incredible staff that's working inside of the center. And it also gives opportunities for you to then give and be generous, right? In a moment of time, as Kimora mentioned, in a moment of time in history when there's so many different attacks on history and historical history, and through the lens of the gauge of activism and and so many things, it provides you a space to get involved. It provides you opportunity to give generously to the center, and to also join and come on a tour, bring a friend or multiple friends or family, or even potentially your school to the center to tour, and have one of our amazing staff members lead you through a amazing part of history, and then engage in a discussion, an open discussion, to see how did you grapple and interpret the history that that you were able to witness. And it really puts forward a lot of the moments and massive moments of the 19th century, and it's right here accessible in Hartford, Connecticut. And so it's a wealth of information, and we look forward to seeing many of you visit the center soon and share the good news that's coming from the Stowe Center for Literary Activism.
And I was seeing on the website that there is a physical location for it. This is a building that houses archives and so on and so forth that people can visit and learn about Harriet Beecher Stowe and other things that are happening.
Absolutely. And then it ends, there's a bookstore, and then once you go through, you can go to the bookstore, and you can then continue your own, inquisitive nature of reading, different books from amazing authors, that are under the gaze and the guise of, literary activism. Absolutely.
Kimora, was it in your life that you became involved with the Stowe Center for Literary Activism? How did you find them?
Like the easiest way to say it is I'm a Hartford kid, and Nook Farm, as Michael was talking about, is this area on Farmington Avenue. And as a kid, you took the E-bus and you came up and down, and there was the house where the lady who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin lived, and Mark Twain's house, right? And those were there, and you knew that there was Mark Twain's house. And then you heard, I think, Katharine Hepburn lived in that area. But this whole little area is this area where you knew that the salons happened. So I don't know how well you know Hartford, if you know anything about, the attitude or the stereotypes associated with Hartford. But we're kind of known for having a chip on our shoulder. And I've always appreciated that, well, yeah, I came of age in the 80s, right? So there's a lot of them be like, yeah, we've got an attitude. But Nook Farm, they had these salons with this really cranky Mark Twain dude. And so this beautiful area, and growing up, that area that's right down the street from Hartford Public High School. So every teenager who went to Hartford Public High School, you knew Harriet Beecher Stowe house. You knew Mark Twain house. You might not have ever had to read the books, but you knew about them. I'm a child of New England in some very interesting and strange ways. And Uncle Tom's Cabin was always a very important and significant book in my family, but also I'm a Black American, which means that the term Uncle Tom is a term that I've heard forever, and that term has been used in many, 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 many different ways. And then I can say that I cannot tell you the year, I was trying to remember, but there's a play that came out years ago, right? And there's a certain telling of American history that not only leaves Black people out, but when they include us, they denigrate us, right? And that's just what it is. And in the 80s and late 80s, early 90s, there's this wonderful place where young playwrights, et cetera, and this is a thing that happens forever, right? So Maya Angelou, and when they did the Blacks years ago, like that was the same thing. That was making a mockery of what they created to see us shine, right? And so when this play, I Ain't Your Uncle, a new Jack retelling of Uncle Tom's Cabin came out, I'm pretty sure I saw a reading, or I attended a reading in New York, but then I saw it when it was at Hartford Stage. And that opened the world for me, right? Because as a young Black woman, or young Black girl who read the book, I identified with Topsy. The little throwaway, pickaninny little Black girl who no one loves. Oh my God, that was my soul, right? And then in the new Jack telling, Topsy's got autonomy. Topsy's telling a story. It's her story. And we don't have to feel sorry for her. We can admire her, right? So that, for me, that was huge. And then we'll get, that pretty much was the answer. But how did I meet Harriet Beecher Stowe? I'm a Hartford kid, and it's right down the street.
Oh, that's a perfect answer. Michael, we're here in 2025. Does the center have plans for 2025, the rest of it, 26, 27? Do you have like a 5-year plan? Anything you want to accomplish?
So without disclosing too much, yes, absolutely. Once again, led by our incredible executive director, Karen Fisk. We have a vision. She has a vision for the center, right? And a lot of that, one being a non-traditional museum that's continuing to bring people together to discuss history and analyzing history through their gaze, through also the gaze of the past, right? And I think if you don't know history, it repeats itself, right? And so many people don't know how interwoven their own histories are connected within, the global histories of the world, right? Specifically through the lens of, Harriet Beecher Stowe and Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? So this is why it was a brilliant idea to create the Stowe on the Go, right? And so Stowe on the Go provides this new opportunity to revolutionize a younger and a newer generation, right? Because, as we know, and this is a lot of times we grappled with on the board, but also just from the center's perspective, everyone knew Harriet Beecher Stowe, and what it's meant to, Nook Farms in Hartford, Connecticut. And typically it was always this older generation, right, coming to the museum and navigating, the space. But then when we fast forward to this modern moment in time, the thought process was, how do we like re-energize the world and reinvigorate rather, this newer generation of young folks through digital literacy, through their stories, and how does it all connect? And so I say all that to say, we want to continue to ramp up, right, the Stowe on the Go series to where, we have some incredible partnerships in Windsor schools that we're doing with the Stowe on the Go, that we're doing in Hartford Public Schools, and the incredible work that Karen and her team are doing. They are going to be in other school districts across Connecticut, right? And that's the ultimate goal, to continue to expand the Stowe on the Go, as a workshop series, to then be able to have these powerful discussions while reigniting the next generation of change agents to be able to fall in love with reading, fall in love with, engaging with their peers, whether you agree or disagree. Historical facts, you cannot change those things, but you can reinterpret it in a way to where, how does it make sense for you, right? And so that's one component of, I would say the 1, 2, 3, 5 year, vision from the Stowe on the Go series, to continue to ramp that up. Another aspect is obviously, as we continue to, we're moving into our 11th year now with the, Stowe Prize for Literary Activism, right? And so having Percival Everett, this year, the first fiction book to win the Stowe Prize, which is incredible. And so how do we now, this next decade, continue to, grow this, a monumental, book award, right? But then look at it from a different lens, right? And so for those who don't know who Percival Everett is, just a quick, he wrote James, which is a newer, modern version, but even more impactful, powerful version of Huckleberry Finn, right? That was written, right? Right there by Mark Twain. And so kind of this duality between, how do we take our book prize and take it to the next level by continuing to bring Hartford and New England, these incredible authors who have poured their heart, their soul into their literary, texts, and then being able to engage them and bring those, that reality and those experiences to the community here. And so looking forward to that. And then obviously the more we continue to, fundraise, the more accessibility that we continue to have to provide more unique opportunities for people to, increase our unique visitor experience within the center. And then that will then continue to help us, within the salons that we do. Right. And so how do we continue to grow, right, the legacy of the center, but take it into this new vision of modernizing it and making it more accessible and bringing more voices to the table. And so we're excited for that. That'd probably be another moment to have Karen come in and share more of a 3, 5, 10-year vision, because she's been doing an amazing job. And so as a board member, our job is to just support their vision and their work and make sure that, that they're adhering to the policies and everything from that perspective, while giving them and supporting them in where they are taking the center. And so that started with the name change. And I think the name change, as Kamora illuminated as well, is the best name change that we can do for this moment in time to take the center where it's going.
Okay, we are slowly starting to run out of time. Kamora, any closing thoughts for the viewer before we go?
Closing thoughts for the viewers. So the Stowe Prize is this wonderful thing that the Stowe Center does. And I think that absolutely everyone should come. Figure out how to get to what is it, September 17th, Michael? Figure out how to get to Hartford.
17th, yep.
Yeah, figure out how to get to Hartford on the 17th to take part in this. But if you can't do that, one of the things I started to talk about earlier was how this is the first fictional book. And we know that in the last, fiction breeds empathy, right? And in the last few years, we realized that our country is devoid of empathy in many places and in ways that doesn't serve us well. I encourage everyone to read this book. And I ask you, chapter 2 is funny, right? So I know that a whole lot of folks are like, this is a serious retelling, but it's hilarious because if you've ever heard, people, in 2020, we started listening to white people talk about the talk that Black people have with their children, right? And I didn't know how to articulate that it's not one conversation, that there's not a point where a Black boy turns 14 and his parents say, we must now talk, and then sit down and say these 10 things, that this is just the conversation over a lifetime. And at some point, a white person was privy to one of these conversations and then reduced it to the talk, right? And then the idea was lost. Chapter 2 of this book is nothing other than a beautiful, loving Black man teaching his children the talk. teaching his children how to act subservient, how to act less than. And I think that in today's world, as we all think about what our responsibilities are as we move forward to be the nation that we want to be, if all of us as Americans, so I'm not just saying white Americans or black Americans, if all of us as Americans don't look at the ignorant play that black Americans have had to create in order to move forward just a little bit, then we can't move forward at all. So this book, this prize that has chosen so many amazing books that academics understand and recognize as educational because it's nonfiction and it can all be fact checked and proven, I'm going to ask everyone to go out on a leap and realize that there's an expansion and an education of the soul that's available within this book that's never been available in one of the Stowe books before. So I'm very, very, very proud to be a part of this. And as I think you realize, I'm a huge fan of, I'm a fan of Americana. And I'm a fan of the human beings who figure out how to wrestle with it in an appropriate way to share it with us without shame and with truth. And I think the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center for Literary Activism does that very, very well.
Okay, Kimora, I have run out of time, so I do have to say goodbye to both of you. Michael and Kimora, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay, I'm Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned in to Arts and Entertainment. In case you need to reach me, I'm at artsandentertainment@mail.com. Well, I hope you have a super day. I really hope you've enjoyed the show. Wasn't it interesting? I'll see you soon. Thanks so much for tuning in.